We must confront the reality that nothing in our solar system can help us.
Now you need to tell me what your plan is to save the world.
We're not meant to save the world. We're meant to leave it. And this is the mission we were trained for.
I've got kids, Professor.
Get out there and save them.
That's a clip from Interstellar. I'm delighted to say that Christopher Nolan has joined us. Christopher, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
And this show's, undoubtedly, this show's most lauded director. Whenever there is a Chris Nolan movie in the ether, our listeners get very excited.
Well, thank you.
And I saw the movie yesterday, 2 hours, 47 minutes, and when I walked out, I wanted to go straight back in and watch it all over again.
Oh, that's brilliant.
There's a lot to think about and a lot to discuss. Tell us at the start of the movie what's wrong with the Earth.
Well, at the beginning of the film, we're dealing with a society that, on the face of things, is actually pretty pleasant. It's an agrarian society. It's a return to a simpler way of life, farming. It's a bucolic sort of idyll, really. But what you start to realise is the only crop that's growing is corn. There's been blight, and crops have been dying one by one, and corn is really all that's left. And so that, combined with a series of increasingly severe dust storms, very much based on the imagery from the 1930s Dust Bowl, as we found it in Ken Burns' fantastic documentary made about the Dust Bowl. Those things you start to realise really represent the threat to the human race, really the end of human life on Earth.
And there's some revisionist history going on, which you're tackling, a bit of conspiracy theory stuff.
Well, yeah, we're dealing with a society where, because food is scarce, because the problems on Earth have become so overwhelming, the idea of space exploration, the idea of moving out there into the universe has gone away completely. Everything's very inward-looking, to the extent where, conspiracy theories about the moon landings being faked have become dogma. They've become the established beliefs of this society, and it's something that Matthew McConaughey's character challenges very, very early in the film.
Yeah, he gives it short shrift. I think
he gives it the appropriate short shrift, as any right-thinking person should.
Matthew McConaughey, another extraordinary performance from him. My understanding is you cast him a long time ago for this role.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on this film for years, and so really Matthew's casting came about, not so much as a result of his, amazing success of last year, but really looking at who could play this iconic figure, who could play the all-American heroic figure, the pilot, somebody with the right stuff, a guy with a little bit of the cowboy about him. I mean, Matthew seemed absolutely perfect for that. And he's not just an incredible actor, but he's also a wonderfully charismatic movie star. And I really wanted to have an emotionally accessible character at the heart of this film. It's a challenging ride for the audience. There's a lot of different places we ask people to go, some very, very exotic and otherworldly concepts in there. You really need a guide in that, and I think Matthew is just a wonderfully accessible guide.
Can I ask you then, in amongst all that complexity and some of the difficult stuff that we're trying to unpack as we're watching the movie, gravity and time are sort of characters within the movie. Could you explain just a bit how they influence the story?
They influence the story in a number of ways. I mean, I've dealt with issues of time in a lot of my films. I've always been fascinated by the subjectivity of it. But in my other films, it's always been a structural fascination, point of view fascination. This is really the first film where I've got to address these issues on a story basis. Time is a character of the story, as you say. I think if there is an antagonist in the story, it is time itself. And time's relationship with gravity, gravity's relationship to the other dimensions we know and stuff. This is the sort of thing that you get to play around with in a film like this.
And you've used the work of Kip Thorne, who's a theoretical physicist, who will bend your mind as well in the way you have to bend space. Can you just talk a bit about wormholes and what they are and how they react to the story and how you even begin to film what one might be like?
Kip Thorne's done a lot of writing about wormholes and about the possibility of their existence. Basically what a wormhole is it's a shortcut across the universe. It's an opening in our space-time that has a similar opening somewhere else in the universe, and so you can drop through and very rapidly get a very long distance. It's sort of one of the only ways you can conceive of traveling faster than the speed of light. And it's essential to the story because this is a story about going out into the stars, going to other stars, and even the nearest star within our own galaxy is thousands and thousands of years away of any form of travel that we could conceive of. So you need something like this. You need a wormhole. And Kip was able to explain to me how a wormhole would work and what it would look like. And indeed, he was able to give us the equations, to our special effects team. Wow. To render this wormhole exactly as it really would appear.
Is that a long equation? Science. Is that like the kind of equation that Michael Caine writes on the board in your movie, or is it a bit shorter than that?
I'd be lying if I said I ever bothered to read the equations. But I gave my special effects supervisor's email to Kip and said, you deal with him. What I did is I looked at what the results would produce, because obviously as a filmmaker and a storyteller, that has to trump everything for me. And I did warn them. Well, I said, look, you can use these real equations, you can use the real science, but if it's not comprehensible to the audience visually, if it doesn't look like something really exciting that we want to see, we're going to have to manipulate that. But what happened was, both in the case of the wormhole, and indeed when we did that same process with the black hole that appears in the film, both of these phenomena, when the real science unveiled what these things would really look like in the real world, they look incredible. I mean, beyond anything I could have conceived of, or my production designer could have conceived of. So we got the privilege of being able to show these things rendered at very high quality for the first time ever. I mean, it was as much a revelation to the science side of things as it was to the filmmaking side. And indeed, my visual effects supervisor, Paul Franklin, and Kip, they're putting out a couple of papers based on the research they did to produce these phenomena for the film.
And how much of this story began when you went to see 2001 with your dad? I think just a few yards from here in Leicester Square in London.
Yeah, 2001 was re-released in the wake of the success of the first Star Wars film. Both those films, both the first Star Wars and 2001, was kind of seminal events for me. You know, what's the potential, what's the possibility of cinema? And yeah, going to Leicester Square with my dad to go see 2001 and seeing this enormous experience on the huge screen kind of unfold before me, that's a feeling I've been trying to get back to in the films I've made, and I'd love to give some of that feeling to kids today.
And does it matter if we don't understand everything?
No, not at all. I mean, really the film is designed as an entertainment. I want there to be emotional clarity in the film. I want you to be able to sort of follow the characters on their journey and experience what they're experiencing in an emotional sense. And then if you're interested in exploring the ideas behind the science of it, you know, or some of the more complicated elements, I mean, that's there for you on a different level. But really we want it to be an exciting ride.
It's still an emotional story, it's a human story, and I just want to mention Mackenzie Foy, who plays Murph as a child, Matthew McConaughey's daughter. I thought her performance was extraordinary. I don't cry ever in movies, but I cried when she said goodbye.
I think she's just an incredible talent. We were so fortunate to find her, and what she was able to do with Matthew in terms of the truth of that relationship. I mean, I'm a father who has a daughter of about that age, and to watch that scene unfold, to film some of those scenes, it was very moving, very heartbreaking.
Can she just do that? I mean, it's in that farewell sequence, I think a lot of parents are going to be relating to that.
I think so. I mean, I really did relate to it as a parent. I mean, Mackenzie's just she's a natural talent. She just has that wonderful gift. It's a very truthful performance.
When I came out of the movie, as I said, I wanted to go straight back in and watch it again. But I wondered, maybe this is just stupid, that I thought it's not really about space, this movie. It struck me that actually it was a humanist love song to the planet. That's how it came over to me.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think perhaps I would say that humanist love song to the planet, but also to the species. I think it really is about human beings and what we're capable of in a very positive sense. And that's why I think, even though we're dealing with a film that in a lot of ways is about the end of days, about the end of the world, I think it's very optimistic, very hopeful.
Mark was most insistent that I ask about the future of celluloid. You are well known, of course, for your love of film. Is there a future? We talk about the future of the Earth.
Yeah.
Is there a future for celluloid?
I think there has to be. It's not really a question of whether we want there to be or not. I think it's essential. As a filmmaker, it's how I like to make films and how I like to show films. But even beyond that, from an archival point of view, it's the only stable archival medium. So if we want to preserve the films we're making today, and indeed the films of the past, we have to have it. It's really critical. And truthfully, the libraries, all the great films we admire from the past, they all exist on film. They have to be capable of being restored, refreshed, even if they're then going to be digitized and put out into new, video formats. We absolutely need to make sure that film is there as a viable medium for forever.
Chris Nolan, thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.
Thank you.